What do you think is the most important thing that's going to redefine the world today? Maybe that's putting it a little bit melodramatically.
Oh, well, I think it'll be the exciting event when Janet Yellen runs out of excuses about not raising rates. That's the main driver. I mean, at the moment, the world's decided that the Fed is going to continue to find reasons not to raise rates. Therefore, the dollar remains a funding currency for carry trades. Therefore, the dollar is weak and everything else is strong.
Right.
And stocks go up because there's plenty of money, and it's not going to get any more expensive.
Right.
And then at some point in time, you know, this very low, slow recovery in the US, but ultra low productivity recovery will absorb so much labor that rates will begin to rise. And at that point in time, the Fed risks being behind the curve.
Right. So every time we train the cameras on Janet Yellen, we got these 2-day meets or whatever, and she's got these long, drawn-out soliloquies. It's going to be the same old, just to change the words in between the
well, look,
the punctuation.
If she was to go on like that, I mean, basically you're in a world which is stuck at low interest rates and you're absorbing labor. In Europe as well, you're absorbing labor extremely quickly. I mean, European unemployment rates are down 2% since the peak and 1% on a year down, which for Europe is just dramatic change. So at some point in time, you're going to have to say, well, we've absorbed all the labor, and now there's an inflation where there's no more output gap, and we've got to normalize rates. And if that does not happen, then you go on in this world in which money seems to be infinite and elastic, in which the Fed will do nothing, and the Europeans will continue to chase an elusive inflation target of 2%. Right. And the Japanese will continue to do what they do best, which is impersonate a corpse. So
it sounds like nobody's in charge right now. We've got countries like Kuroda impersonating corpses. We've got Yellen going through the motions of talking, but really being so dictated to by external events that she's got no control of what's going on inside her own economy. Who is in charge? Is anybody in charge? Well, we don't have to have anybody in charge.
Yeah, I think, no. I don't think there's anyone really flying the plane, but that doesn't really matter. Because markets are the automatic pilot, and what markets will eventually do is they will go back to the scenario whereby the US is going to be the strongest economy, Japan is going to be the weakest economy, and Europe's going to be stuck in the middle, which means that in relative monetary policy terms, the US is likely to be the strong currency again. Right. But for that to happen, you've got to break out of this idea that the Fed is in stasis and nothing is ever going to happen. Actually, things are happening all the time. The economies are progressing. Right. And at some point in time, this is going to be quite clear that you're back to the same paradigm as before, which is that the US economy is the strongest and therefore will have the tighter monetary policy.
But you are getting stasis in the US, though. I mean, all this stuff, this 5% unemployment rate and all that, and everything as a result of people just extracting themselves and pretending they're invisible in this world. That's the result of what you term stasis.
Well, yes, it is. And I mean, the most amazing thing is the speed at which the US economy and now the European economy and the Japanese economy are absorbing labor. And it is, of course, a labor which is partly coming out of a higher participation rate, partly, but it is especially people with very low qualifications, so they don't get paid any money. So while the employment goes up and the unemployment goes down, the wage rates don't move. Now, the question is that a permanent state of affairs? Right. Are we living in a world in which labor has lost bargaining power and in which technology makes them even cheaper because, you know, they're up against free apps as a source of production? Yeah. Or are we living in a world in which the normal rules of supply and demand apply? Right. And that's the differences between the sort of currency and bond and equity markets you're facing today based on stasis and what could happen in the future, which is back to the old normal of the US leading the way.